Not letting up. Protesters in Egypt continue to stand their ground, saying they won't leave until President Hosni Mubarak is out. They're planning for another major protest tomorrow. Journalists have been attacked, human rights workers detained, but the people of Egypt are not backing down. All eyes, in fact, are on Egypt, not just what's going on, but how we got to this point and what will happen next. Yunus Abdullah Muhammad is the chief analyst of IslamPolicy.com and joins us now from Morocco. Yunus, are we seeing a Muslim revolution in Egypt?
Well, I'm not sure that we could call this either specifically Muslim or a revolution. The requirements for a revolution are that a specific paradigm is put in place of an old paradigm, and we don't know exactly what the people of Egypt are calling for yet. We do know that they have grievances. We do know that they're sick of living under the despotic rule of Hosni Mubarak. But we also have to realize that the real cause of this has much more to do with the international order that dominates the world today, specifically the American-led empire. The reason that 40% of Egyptians are in poverty and malnourished and unemployed is largely as a consequence of the American empire's decision to print and add an additional $1 trillion into the international economy, which is driving the prices of basic staple products up across the world. And all of these revolutions, or properly termed rebellions and grievances, are a tipping point and a boiling point as a consequence of the elite's class war. So it has nothing to do with Islam per se at this point, although a large portion of Egyptians, we know from a Pew Research Council's poll, do approve, 95% approve of the role of Islam in government in Egypt. The same is similar across the Muslim world. The fact of the matter is that what we really have is a rebellion, and it will be up to the people of Egypt to decide if they want to manufacture a revolution. Most of the people in the world that are conscious of how this empire works and what causes poverty in states like Egypt are well aware that there are potential ways that this could be turned into a global revolution, in fact. But I don't think we could term it now Muslim or revolution at this point. More or less a grievance and an uprising, a rebellion, if you will.
I think it's interesting that you're talking about other countries, particularly the United States. I know the United States government has gone back and forth about what to do. You know, a lot of other countries are saying, you know, the answer is nothing. Don't do anything. Let the Egyptian people decide for themselves. I want to play a quick part of an interview from Russia Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. He was speaking to RT.
I don't think any outsiders should really be pushing Egypt one way or another. I don't think any suggestions from outside are going to be helpful and are going to lead to a sustainable resolution of this situation. I don't think artificial deadlines, ultimatums are in order. And I strongly believe that the Egyptian political forces, political groups, must themselves find a way out.
I want to get your thoughts on this. I mean, I've been watching these protests, and there are people who are interviewed, people with signs, saying the U.S. isn't doing enough or the U.S. isn't doing the right thing. Do you agree that the U.S. shouldn't be doing anything?
Well, I think that if we pay attention to the rhetoric of the U.S., they'd like you to believe that they're not doing anything. But somehow the Mubarak regime gets their hands on an awful lot of excess cash to buy $1.5 billion worth of weaponry. And all of the weapons, the tanks, the tear gas that you see used against the Egyptian people to try to quell this revolution is in fact funded by American tax dollars. Not to mention the fact that the pro-Mubarak counter-revolutionary force that just happens to appear from amongst Egypt's 30 million impoverished people probably was paid off with dollar bills. So we have to really look at the fact that Egypt has been a functioning American empire, client state for well over 30 years. And the simple fact of the matter is that there is no more unipolar power in the world. America is going to try to bargain a way whereby they have until September to adapt, to influence, to try to use propaganda, to try to use covert and overt operations as they have since 1953 in the Middle East to shape things in their direction. But it apparently seems as though the strategic blunder of entering into a war of attrition in Iraq and Afghanistan is now starting to weigh on the world, and the world is going to have to let people in the Muslim world decide for themselves with regard to government, with regard to economics, with regard to the way that they live their lives.
And Yunus,
we agree with this.
When they decide for themselves, I mean, let's look ahead. I mean, what will happen? There's a lot of speculation that the Muslim Brotherhood may have a role in the future of governing in Egypt. Does the Muslim Brotherhood have a plan in place for governing?
Well, the Muslim Brotherhood has been active politically in Egypt since the late 1920s. They adopted a platform of political participation once they were let out of prison by Anwar Sadat and that regime, and democratic participation has been their platform for change. But no, actually, if you really want to recognize the reality, one of the reasons that peoples in the Muslim world do not necessarily go wholeheartedly towards Islamist governmental parties is because they don't know any of the specifics of their policy. So it will be a vying in the political arena for one to put forth a platform. You cannot call this a revolution until an alternative paradigm is discussed. The Ikhwan would be a very primary benefactor of being able to put forth a paradigm because Mohammed al-Baradei will do nothing but cater to secular norms of the UN-dictated, IMF, World Bank-dominated international order. In the event that they were able to connect the Muslim world, they could engage in different sort of political platforms. For example, my institution has put on the table the idea of connecting the Tunisian and Egyptian revolutions by building high-speed rail between Tunisia and Egypt and looking at defaulting on the billions of dollars of debt that the IMF and the World Bank has these countries strangled in. But that's specific policy, and you don't hear anything about specific policy from the Ikhwan al-Muslimin. They only can issue condemnations of the regimes that are in place, but they have not ever set forth with practical and pragmatic policy recommendations by which they would repair the situation.
I want to get in here.
So they're going to have to.
I want to get in here really quick, just because we're running out of time, but here in the United States, a lot of the mainstream media are trying to make attempts to understand all of this, and also some blatant signs of a disconnect between the cultures. I want to play something for you. Sean Hannity from Fox News, he had on his show last night a man he introduced as the, quote, controversial Muslim cleric, Imam Amjad Chowdhury. It was a 15-minute spot. Hannity interrupted every question, and at the end, he insulted him. So I want to play this for you and then get your reaction.
My understanding of Islam is exactly accurate. Your comments condemn yourself, sir.
Broaden your horizon a little bit more. You know, you're very
Thank you very much for being with us.
Next time we can have a more decent conversation.
Yeah, well, you're one sick, miserable, evil SOB. Well, but thank you for coming on anyway.
So what do you think about this? One sick, evil SOB for somebody trying to describe what was going on.
Well, I mean, it's typical of the mainstream media in the United States. We had an interview with ourselves, former Revolution Muslim organization, adulterated by CNN on the liberal or the centrist spectrum, and that's what they're going to try to do. They're going to try to find the most radical, most controversial view with relation to this change in the international order of things, if you will, or the potential change, and they're going to try to demonize the voices of Islam to make it look like it is a cutthroat religion ready to cut all those that will not convert to Islam. The trick will be in using the media to convey true ideas and staying away from media like the mainstream media that will not allow that to occur. And that's something that Islamists or Muslims in general must be weary of. This will turn into a massive propaganda war over the next few months, especially if Hosni Mubarak stays in power. There's an opportunity for an increased role for Muslims in the international arena from a political and an economic perspective for the first time in quite a long while. And we do not want to have that malfunction by allowing ourselves to be used by people like Sean Hannity to make it seem as though we are calling simply to violence with no possible alternative solutions stemming from Islamic ideology.
Yunus Abdullah Muhammad, Chief Analyst of IslamPolicy.com.